A very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. On behalf of the Nepal Institute for International Cooperation and Engagement, it gives me great pleasure to extend a warm welcome to our distinguished chair, fellow scholars, and participants who have joined us through Zoom and are watching us live on YouTube. We are thrilled to have you join us today at the International Young Scholars Summit 2020. This international forum aims to bring together rigorous and erudite young scholars from all around the world over a single platform. The aim is to create an academic space to encourage young scholars and academicians from the field of international relations, political science, diplomacy, public policy, administration, and related subfields. The conference will be held for 3 days consecutively through 30 different sessions with 2 parallel sessions, white and green rooms running simultaneously throughout the conference. The conference will feature 275 scholars from 25 different countries who will be delivering their presentations and sharing their expertise with us. Our sessions are streaming live on YouTube, so please feel free to share it on your social media handle with the hashtag IYSS2020. This is the 11th session of the conference. To chair and moderate the session, we have Dr. Irina Ionela Pop here with us today. Irina Ionela Pop is Director and Senior Research Fellow of the Asia Pacific Program, Center for Geopolitics and Security in Realism Studies, London, United Kingdom. She holds a PhD in International Relations and European Studies. Previously, she was a lecturer at universities in Romania. Currently, she is working with the Romanian Public Administration on development strategies and European Union funding programs. Without any further ado, let me request Irina to please chair the session. Ma'am, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everybody. I'm very honored to chair this interesting session of Nepal Institute for International Cooperation and Engagement. We will discuss today about Belt and Road Initiative, and as I saw the program, there are very interesting subjects from all our participants. I will ask each of you to have an 8 minutes presentation in order to not delay the following sections, and of course to be ready to answer to questions which are coming from the participants. Okay, if we can start now, I will give the first word to Mrs. Joahnna Esquivias is from LaSalle University of Philippines. Okay.
I don't think she has joined, so we can proceed with the second speaker.
Okay, my dear friend Jumel Rahul Jaybhay. Yes, please share your video with us. Yeah. Rahul Jaybhay from Jawaharlal Nehru University, India, with a paper on China-Pakistan economic or strategic corridor, why CPEC's oil pipeline is destined to fail. The word is yours, Rahul.
Thank you, ma'am. Can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. Good morning to one and all present here. Today I will be going to speak on the topic China-Pakistan economic corridor, why CPEC's oil pipeline project is destined to fail. Where I argue, and my main proposition is that the proposed pipeline which runs from the Godar in Pakistan to Kashgar region in China's Xinjiang province that China aspires to build is economically unsustainable when compared to the usual sea route where the oil tankers passes through the Indian Ocean, then into South China Sea via the Malacca Strait. Now, the most important question that arises from this is why China is building such oil pipeline when it is not economically feasible. The answer is China fears that its oil pipeline, which is coming from the Middle East or the Persian Gulf, might be blocked by the US if the security competition intensifies in the future. This could have possible repercussions for China's economy and its military power. To avoid such scenario, as a precautionary measure, China is building oil pipeline projects in Myanmar and Pakistan so that it could bypass the Malacca Strait and secure its oil supplies through these alternative routes. Now, another genuine question which you all might have in your mind is why China is so fearful of the US that it is engaging in an economically unsustainable activity. Why? Is there a possibility of war between them? So yeah. So now to answer this question, in international politics, if we consider, the possibility of war cannot be avoided, since there is no international authority to see and enforce order between the state or to adjudicate dispute between the states. States are always in fear that other states might attack them. So thus states put a higher premium on security interests while other interests are subordinated to that. Now, if we see, China's building of oil pipeline is to ensure its energy security without paying any heed to economics. Moreover, as power transition theorists have also asserted, there will always be a conflict between a declining power. Now, here declining power is the US, which has a saturated economy and whose prospects for economic growth is very low, and a rising power, that is China, whose prospect for economic growth is very much high, and in the future we can see a good growth. These two powers, like a declining power and rising power, are much more likely to end up in conflict because the interests they pursue are irreconcilable. The interest will always be in conflict with each other. Thus, China's thinking on these terms are clearly justified. Now we'll move to our central question: why pipeline project which China intends to build in Pakistan, connecting Gwadar to Kashgar in China, will be economically unsuitable, or that? Now, my first argument for this is the geography. Like, if we consider, the oil will be offloaded at the Gwadar port. From there, it has to be transferred through the pipelines and it has to cross the Himalayan. Now to cross the Himalayan mountains, it has to climb 15,400 Gunjera Pass. Now, to climb such a height, we need heavy pumping equipments. Additionally, if we consider the climate is very harsh when it comes to Himalayas, and the climate could drop as low as minus 30 degrees Celsius. So you need additional heating and insulating material to keep the oil pipeline running. Furthermore, if we consider this region, the Himalayan region is also earthquake prone. So whenever there is an earthquake, there is a possibility that it could inflict a heavy damage on the pipeline. So in brief, the geography is a major impediment for the realization of the project. Now, second, I will come to see if the Gwadar has that much handling capacity, whatever China intends it to deliver. So now, if we consider China's, like, now this is very easy. Like, for the matter of facts, if we consider China's import for the year 2017 and 18 stood at 335 million tons, out of which 80% of the oil, that is roughly 268 million tons, passed through the Malacca Strait. Now, since China needs to avoid Malacca Strait because of the possible US blockade, because it fears that US might blockade them, then it has to divert this 268 billion tons of oil through the pipeline projects in Myanmar and Pakistan. But if we look at the official numbers regarding the capacity handling of these two pipelines, they show that it's impossible to deliver such a vast amount. Now, under CPEC, that is China-Myanmar Economic Corridor, oil pipeline that runs from Khaokpo Port in Ramri Island to China's Kunming city in Eastern Province, this delivers only 22 million tons of oil yearly. That means out of 268 million tons, only 22 million tons is handled by the Myanmar pipeline. The rest has to be diverted through pipeline project in Pakistan, which stood at 246 million tons. Does this pipeline has a capacity? My answer is clearly no, because of the evidences. Like, first argument is, in 2016 and 17, according to a Shanghai-based analyst, Bo Kong, the Gwadar has only handled 1 million tons of cargo. Now, to deliver that much oil, the handling capacity of the cargo must be increased by 246 times the current capacity, which is clearly not the easiest task, and current pandemic makes it very worse. My second argument regarding this is the specifications of the handling capacity of Gwadar port. Now, if we consider, it could only handle cargo vessels up to 50,000 deadweight tons. That means at one go, 50,000 tons of the cargo could be delivered. Now, this shows that Godar can only handle mid-size oil tankers and cargo vessels, thus restricting its utility when compared to deep sea ports, which are operating in Singapore and Dubai, which could handle at one time around 200,000 deadweight tons of cargo. Now, with such a low capacity, it will be impossible to complete the estimated delivery of 246 million tons yearly. And the more disheartening fact is that the oil delivery had just started in Godar, and according to the reports in Jan 2020, and the first oil tanker just delivered 3,900 tons of oil, and that is very minuscule when we compare the amount of 246 million tons that China intends to transfer. Now, my third argument is based on empirical calculation that is done by Ericsson and the Coelen in their article China's Pipeline Security Dream, which is published in Naval War Journal, and they basically asserted that it cost approximately, and I quote, $10 a barrel to move oil from Pakistan to China city Urumqi through pipelines, with additional $5 to deliver oil to the demand centers in the eastern region. So oil will be delivered to the western region, northwestern region of China, and from there it has to be transferred to the eastern centers, which are the demand. So approximately it will cost $15 a barrel. Now compare this, it just costs $2 a barrel to carry oil from the Gulf to the eastern coast in China. This means China is roughly losing more than $500 billion in expenditure through pipeline projects. Yeah. So my three arguments is like geography will be the major impediment to the realization of the project. My second argument is like Godar doesn't have that much capacity to handle. So the capacity has to be improved, and it would take a lot of time. And my third argument is based on empirical calculation that is done by Ericsson and Coelen, who argue that it will be much more costlier to deliver oil through the pipeline than the usual sea route. So I conclude this by saying that still we'll see that China is going ahead with this project, will go ahead with this project, because this project is built on strategic interest rather than economic consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rahul. It was a very interesting presentation, and always energy geopolitics is very interesting. I like very much the way how you structure your discourse and how organized you were, talking about first argument and so on, geography, economics, and of course, the last one. I would have a question for you.
Yeah. Yes.
From when we talk about Belt and Road Initiative and the energy needs of China, what region do you think is best for supply for China? If this project is not working.
Can you repeat your question? Like,
yes, talking about the energy needs of China, how China could ensure its supply. From your point of view, from which region?
Like my point of view is, if we consider the economics of the project, like the CPEC oil pipeline project, it is economically unsustainable. That's my my clear goal. But if we consider the strategic interest, because China fears that US might blockade oil supplies in the Indian Ocean and through the Malacca Strait. So from the strategic point of view, I will go with the Chinese, because they think that because they are acting on the strategic interest. And if we consider in the international politics, state must self-help themselves, because they don't have any enforcer. Like if US interdict China at the Malacca Strait in the future, then there is no authority to help China. So it has to basically go with its strategic interest. It has to secure itself. So for securing itself, it is not paying heed to economics, or it is even it will bear the costlier investment. Yeah, it is ready to bear, because that secure itself. So that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rahul, and be prepared for the final of this event to bring other ideas and conclusion if you want, and please verify the chat for answering questions. Thank you very much again. We are moving now to the next speaker, Jumel Gabilan Estranero, independent political risk, defense security, and strategic intelligence analyst from Philippines. And he has a very interesting topic, Belt and Road Initiative and Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, Nexus in Indo-Pacific, Strategic Costs and Consequences in postmodern uncertainty. Jumel, are you there? Oh.
Okay, I'm here. So thank you so much, Dr. Irina,
nice
Ionela,
to meet you
and
again.
Nice to meet
and
you
I'm
once
sure
again,
you will have a very special
hopefully,
presentation today.
Okay, so my time starts now, 11:32 in the morning, and hopefully you would learn something from it. So once again, my presentation would tackle about the Belt and Road Initiative, or the BRI of China, and of course, condescendingly, of course, we have the Quad Nexus in the Indo-Pacific, which has, of course, a very large extent of cost strategically, and of course, its consequences, its stakes, its moves, and results in the postmodern uncertainty. So let me share my screen.
Okay.
So can you see?
Yes.
Okay. So can you see right now?
Yes.
Okay. So once again, thank you so much, Dr. Ionela. Your name is actually down in my slides. Okay. So here's for the outline of my presentations. Okay. I'll be discussing about the highlights from the current and past development of both spheres, the Belt and Road Initiative, the China factor, and of course the Quad, or the peripheral factors, of course being led by the US and of course the other Western powers. We also have the nexus and implications, the analysis, assessment and forecast, the recommendation, and of course the conclusion and way ahead. So in this picture, I want to at least say to you that for the past few years, Chinese President Xi Jinping made two landmark speeches in 2013, as you see here. The first in Astana in September, and the other in Jakarta a month later in that year, in which he actually set out the contours of the Belt and Road Initiative, a vision of transnational connectivity across Eurasia and the Indian Oceans. So you see here, for example, there's a road, the railway, the energy, the maritime, and of course the digital linkages, which supporting the industrial clusters and free trade zones, lubricated by customs, facilitations, and of course other arrangement. It says to be that it cost between $4 trillion and $8 trillion back then, including more than 70 countries. So next would be the two main parts of BRI. So for you to understand BRI, you have to know the two parts. The first is the belt is, of course the Silk Road economic road, and of course the Maritime Silk Road Initiative. So the belt is the land-based connectivity that envisages three links. One goes from the east, China, to Europe via Central Asia and Russia. Another goes from China to the Gulf and the Mediterranean Sea, and the north-south road goes from the south or southwest China across the Indochina Peninsula in the Indian Oceans. So the road consists of the three main or maritime linkages, by the way. Talking about the ports and sea lanes supporting industrial and energy projects in their hinterland. One link will go to the China across the Indian Ocean, to the African coast, and then to the Mediterranean Sea, and another will go from China to the South Pacific Ocean, and finally the Polar Silk Road will in stages cross Bering Strait from the North Sea route. Okay, so here's what we call the reviving of the Silk Road in 2015. So I'm talking about some sort of development that the State Council authorized an OBOR, the One Belt One Road Action Plan in 2015 with two main components, as I mentioned earlier. Okay, the Silk and the Maritime Road in the 21st Century Maritime Vision and Missions. they're trying to envision that the three connecting China to Europe, Persian Gulf, the Mediterranean, and the Indian Ocean will create connections among regional waterways. Okay, and during the Belt and Road Forum in May 2017, Chinese President Xi Jinping declared it successful with China, signaling deals to a total of 68 countries and international organizations to jointly develop infrastructures along the new Silk Road trade routes. So let's go with the next. Okay, so this is, so as you see, these blinking two yellow circles here, I mentioned earlier that in 2017, in November, after almost 10 years after its collapse, the Quad, or the strategic dialogue among the US, Japan, India, and Australia was reborn again. So months before that November, China hosted the first Belt and Road Forum for international cooperations. The forum was part of the Globe Trade Cooperation and Infrastructure Development Program, known as the Belt and Road Initiative. And of course, in 2019, it's quite highlighting that down there, you see that the Belt and Road, as Chinese President Xi Jinping was telling, that they've actually reached the African context. Now let's go with the Quad. Okay, so what is Quad, by the way? It is a quadrilateral security dialogue that is quite informal in terms of the informal or between US, India, Japan, and Australia. It was actually born out of disaster in 2004, 2007, and of course it dissipated in 2008. It was said to be an ASEAN NATO, okay, as they were saying, but of course, people are computing that the Quad 1.0 and Quad 2.0 are technically different. So you see here that the treaties and partnerships across the Quad, from formal treaty ally to strategic partnerships between those four powers, and of course, the old alliances going to the new alliances, aiming to have a geostrategic strength among the powers in the global trades, and having a safe haven of peace and free and secure sea lane of communications to engage with each other. Now let's go with the Nexus and Nexus in implications. As you see here, according to the Global Times, a newspaper in China, which is actually making some propaganda in favor of China, that amidst escalating China-US tensions, the US has seized the opportunities, okay, to at least make up for the weak points of the Quad mechanism. That's according for China. And for China, Quad countries claim their military economic measures, which are aimed at maintaining balances of power, and ideologically, it wants to contain China. That's from the perspective of China, by the way. However, I also want to highlight here that the India has two connections. We have the RIC and of course the Quad. So India's attitude towards China it should be a good opportunity for India to put pressure on China. And of course, RIC, by the way, is Russia, India, China Summit. And India is both a part of RIC and Quad countries, by the way. So this is my personal observation that the time has come for India to shift its policy paradigm towards one-sided love and respect for China since 1962. And the last picture you see here is the number of destinations, particularly in ASEAN region, that such development could have instilled much confidence within ASEAN that the US will continue to be a reliable partner in the future. Now let's go with this. Indirectly, what I am trying to say is that, of course, the BRI would be deprioritized in 2020 onwards because the investment and promotion efforts might be at stake. There's a bureaucratic hurdles for project and investment approvals, and at the same time, the policymakers' attention in those markets is similarly preoccupied. So let's go with the some sort of analysis. The BRI, with the focus on values, it has considered that China is acting on authoritarian nation with a neo-feudalist agenda. BRI is a combination of both China geoeconomics and geostrategy. Second, the Indo-Pacific Infrastructure Alliance should be considered also here because Chinese card or behavior in terms of providing infrastructure might be an imperative in the Quad. The third one would be the Infrastructure Alliance could eventually pave way for a security alliance, which is of course might give might give some sort of action or triggering points to India as a key actor in Quad mechanism, pointing out that the question of how far India will go in the next, whether India, Australia, UK, and of course United States, and among others in ASEAN. I also want to put pressure, put emphasis on one article that I have written with my girlfriend Tina, wherein we highlighted in Eurasia Review that China's international security activism may actually provide challenges or challenge in the ASEAN and US partnership that actually testing the Quad in ASEAN plethora. Now, my recommendation is shown here. The US must define the risk. Second, the option has to be laid down. First, determine the regional connectivity with more transparency. Third would be the Indo-Pacific strategy should be effective, articulating more of the inclusive regional visions. Fourth would be the Quad 2.0 must provide leadership to the world. And of course, the nations have to be clear whether they would hold or uphold their principles. So we must make cases, by the way, that we have the interest involved, not solely values. And we have to engage positively with Beijing, although we have a problem with the way they behave. My conclusion would be the BRI is not actually a bubble, okay? That actually appear nowhere. So there is a viable non-kinetic response that we need to see or take a look to be more productive than resorting directly to kinetic response. Second, China and the United States are trying to attempt to alter the regional order in their own factor, both in security and economic realms. Third would be in Quad's history, it's quite interesting that the stars are starting to align for a harder line of China, but of course we have to be cautious in that. Defecting to a softer line on China could actually spell doom for the Quad all over again. So last two points. The international order in this postmodern uncertainty future should depend on the US management between China and US. Second would be the relationship of countries with with one another in general, and of course the COVID-19 pandemic will derail BRI cooperations in 2022 onwards. As I mentioned earlier, it will deprioritize some of the soft lines of trade and investments under this initiative, and of course the way ahead. Okay, I want to focus on this before I end. There are three different scenarios that may arise from BRI: the good, the bad, and the ugly. That's my perspective. But the good scenario for China is that BRI succeeds and the United States is placed as a security hegemon in the region. The bad scenario is that the BRI completely fails and there are no massive successes and China turns inward, and we can claim that both scenarios are unlikely. The former scenario is unlikely because China has not reported any great successes so far. And the latter scenario is unlikely because so many nations are interested in taking part. So China has largely invested so much and there is no alternative of Indo-Pacific region strategy as of this moment. So we can suggest that the most likely scenario is the ugly, on one where there is a several clashing rules-based orders between. So I guess on the part of India, it has to revisit and change its policy towards China because China has always been violating the so-called Panchas Agreement, which was signed between India and China in 1964, which talk about the non-aggressions. And for long, India was a reluctant partner due to its non-alignment history. Relations with Russia that bit by bit, it needs to balance relations with China. However, with gloves off on China, fronting those decks are cleared. It's time for us to at least move past historically baggage to secure our interests. So it's not only the US, Australia, UK, China, India, and also the ASEAN players, which can actually have a huge impact in this postmodern uncertainty, both economic and security, considering that Indo-Pacific has to at least prevail, and at the same time, there's a competing factor on the part of, or so-called, the BRI, or the Belt and Road Initiative of China. So I guess there is a clash, but of course, it has to be healthy. Thank you so much, and have a nice day. That ends my presentation. Thank you so much, Keep Safe, and Heal Thy Land. Godspeed, everyone.
Thank you very much, Jumel. I like very much your presentation, and you made several very good and you made very good good points. For example, we have a Quad which needs to be redefined and institutionalized. And of course, Quad, in comparison with the Belt and Road Initiative, is a restrictive for the moment initiative. And of course, in this Quad, India will have a very important role to play. And
yes, yes.
Of course, when we talk about United States and China, of course, these two countries are trying to define the world order in their favor. Well, how do you see the attractivity of the Quad, Jumel? Do you think that the Quad has the same attractivity for common people as the Belt and Road Initiative? Talking about that Quad is for specialists, for security specialists, and Belt and Road brings some geoeconomic aspects.
Okay, that's a very can you hear me, Dr. Irina? Okay. I believe my my perspective about that is that Quad is putting its or advancing its cards not only in the security partnership, but of course in the economic trades and investment narratives. For instance, for example, no, I have to at least engage with China and Australia. In the early June this year, I believe that they have actually announced a comprehensive partnership that actually led to an agreement with other members of the Quad. And of course, based on my research, the U.S. has in recent months held multiple bilateral and multilateral exercises with Japan and Australia in the South China Sea. So the idea of Quad was actually proposed long ago, and it has to continue for them, well, from their perspective, because it has been facing a lot of challenges on the front of China in terms of threat perceptions, strategic culture, military capabilities, and costs. So the Quad countries are trying to claim that there must be a cohesive military and economic measures aiming to maintain the balance of power and rules-based regional order. But in fact, the Quad grouping is of course an ideological camp similar to the one during the Cold War, which of course trying to contain China. I guess if Japan, Australia, and India would totally follow the U.S. lead, the U.S. will take the opportunity to get more deeply involved in regional affairs, and this would actually open a room to further strengthen the regional military presence and realize its pivot to the Asia Pacific in a true sense, causing the strategic interests of those countries to engage with and the regional blocs that they would engage with in economic decoupling from China. Thank you so much, Dr. Irina.
Thank you very much for these details. And we move on with the following speaker, Nomita Toppo from University of New Delhi. If Pramod can help us.
She is there. Nomita is there. Nomita,
Yes.
please unmute yourself. Yes.
Hello, good morning all.
Good morning, Nomita.
Thank you, Dr. Irina Pop, for introduction. I would like to thank NICE for giving me this opportunity to speak in the summit. Let me share my presentation. So the topic that I'm going to speak today is impact of China's Belt and Road Initiative on Russia. In today's day, we can see that China and Russia relationship seems to be at its peak. Both the countries have enjoyed close relations militarily, economically, and politically while supporting each other on various global issues. In recent years, China has significantly expanded its economic footprint through its Belt and Road Initiative. China's Belt and Road Initiative aims to economically connect more than 60 countries. Here, I would like to present an argument by Joseph Nye. He argues that with the collapse of Soviet Union in 1991, the de facto USA-China alliance ended and then started Russia-China partnership. Likewise, in 2001, both the countries signed a treaty of friendship and cooperation. In this presentation, I would try to explore the nature of China's presence in Russia through its Belt and Road Initiative and its implication in the region. Majorly, I'll deal with the infrastructural development in Russia, which is happening because of BRI. Firstly, it's important to understand China's BRI. I'll explain it in very brief. The Belt and Road Initiative of China comprises of two notions introduced by the President of China in 2013. This initiative tries to connect several countries of Asia, Europe, Middle East, and Eastern Africa along two major routes that are the new Silk Road Economic Belt and the 21st Century Maritime Silk Road. We can see that China connects through Russia, Central Asia, and Europe through roadways or through land by the Silk Road. The other route is the Maritime Silk Road that China connects through waterway or the seaway through Africa, West Asia, and then Europe. The BRI involves cooperation between the countries in 5 key areas. Those are infrastructural cooperation, political coordination, the growth of mutual trade, strengthening social and cultural exchange, and free movement of the capital. Now, here it is interesting to say that Russia is a major BRI recipient in the field of oil and gas. The total investment of total investment of China in Russia is $123.87 billion in the field of oil and gas. For China, Russia is important partner in the pursuit to connect the Eurasian region to the Silk Road. It is interesting to see that Russia is one of the largest oil and gas producer in the world. It is the expected output is 11.52 million barrels per day on an average. And majority of the natural gas reserve which Russia has is present in the West Siberian region. Here, according to some of the critiques, they point out that China is majorly interested, or it's majorly eyeing on Russia's oil and gas reserve. One of the major objective of BRI is to promote infrastructural development in the partner countries. Likewise, several infrastructural development works have been initiated in Russia as well. For example, in October 2019, Chinese company, China National Chemical Engineering Limited, and Russia's Baltic Chemical Complex, they built a gas processing and chemical plant in a small town near the Gulf of Finland. This 13.3 billion project is expected to be completed in next 5 years. Besides energy, there are several other projects that both the countries are planning to collaborate in. For example, high-tech, civil aviation, and space and agricultural products. Here, I would like to tell that there several projects of roadways and railways have been signed by both the countries under the BRI. Like, for example, the Eurasian high-speed railway project connecting Moscow to Kazan has been proposed under BRI. Meanwhile, a Silk Road style 2,000 kilometers motorway across Russia connecting Shanghai and Hamburg have been also approved. This would make the transportation of goods very easy and the cost would decrease, I feel. The other sector where both the countries are majorly collaborating is the mining sector. And again, it is very interesting to see that 5 top BRI mining projects out of 10 are located in Russia. This includes a 1.8 billion coal mining complex on the Mezhege deposit in Russia. The other major China-Russia alliance is the Serbian gas pipeline. This Serbian gas pipeline is supposed to be one of the biggest BRI project in Russia. This Russia would again run through, this project would again run through Russia and then go to China. Talking about the COVID time, the two countries have announced new scientific cooperation geared towards testing vaccine for COVID-19. The trade ties between the two nations stood at $107 billion in the year 2018. However, both the countries have aimed to raise the trade to $2,000 billion by 2024. The one major factor as to why Russia and China trade can be expected to double is the US-China trade war, which has led to China has moved away from purchasing products from the United States and establishing its new supply chain within the countries of ASEAN and the partner countries of BRI, and to which Russia is part of. Here, what I have found in my entire research is that both the countries, the relationship between both the countries is mutual, I feel. The pandemic, what the pandemic has caused in Russia is the oil prices have fallen down and it has really hurt the Russia's pocket, leaving it more reliant on China economically. On the other hand, for China, the pandemic has first appeared in China's Wuhan, which has hurt Beijing's credibility, and Western nations have begun to push back against Chinese tech and political policies. Hence, China needs to have cordial relationship with Russia, and of course, Russia also needs to have a good relationship with China at this point of time. So, the concern areas are like while Moscow, while the research, what I have found is like, while Moscow is keen on benefiting from the financial opportunities opened up in China, it is also worried about becoming too dependent on China, both economically and politically. And what happened during the initial pandemic time was Russia had to close its border with China, which is around 4,200 kilometers. This really annoyed China, and there was a sort of friction, but they sorted out later. To wind up the discussion, I would quickly like to highlight the positive aspects of Belt and Road Initiative in Russia. First, the BRI can lead to the integration of the Russian transport system into the transport and logistic network of the Eurasian region. This would connect the Eurasian region with Russia and China, and it would lesser the time of transportation, lesser the cost. Secondly, BRI would facilitate infrastructural development in the regions of Russia which are underdeveloped, like the Serbian region, the Far East region of Russia. Thirdly, I would say BRI would promote strengthening of industrial cooperation between China and Russia. Last but not the least, Russia's participation in the BRI would increase the possibility of amalgamation of the Eurasian Economic Union and the BRI, which China has been very interested of since the beginning. Thank you. That is my presentation.
Thank you very much, Nomita. It was a very interesting presentation.
Thank you.
We can say that Russia and China are both partners, and maybe somewhere in the future they can be also rivals in the region. Of course, China is very interested by Russia's energy resources, and of course, since it is interested to promote its trade in, for example, in the Siberia region. But
Yes.
also, I think they are partners because of United States. On the other hand, we have both Russia and China interested in Central Asia region, which is a region with tradition in the neighborhood policy of Russia. And I think there can be a friction between these countries. If you very well noted about the Belt and Road Initiative and the Eurasian Economic Union. And of course, China imports also a lot of energy from Central Asia through its pipelines.
Correct.
And there can be a competition in the region for these two big countries. Thank you very much, Nomita. If in the end, okay, we have a question for you.
Yes.
On chat. In your opinion, why is China not investing to modernization of existing logistic routes? For example, the Trans-Siberian Railway. You can see the question on the chat.
Yes. You know what I have found is China has been investing in many infrastructural development of roadways and railway in Russia, including the Eurasian high-speed railway project that is connecting Moscow to Kazan. Whereas the Serbian railway, which Soy is talking about, I think it's not far. I think, I believe what I have read, what I have researched, I feel that sooner or later or sooner, China is going to invest on the railway of Siberian Trans Railway, because I think it is a very major, major area, major region through which China could supply goods by train in China through Russia. Thank you so much.
We thank you to Nomita.
Thank
you. And we are moving forward with the next participant, if it is available. Sampurna Baumik from University of Hyderabad. It is there.
Ma'am, she has not joined the session.
Okay, thank you very much. Then I will give the word to Devendra Kumar from University of Hyderabad with a presentation about multilateral initiatives and security dilemma on a comparative analysis of Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank and Belt and Road Initiative in South Asia. Please, Devendra, the screen is yours.
Oh, thank you and good morning to everyone. Am I audible now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So my presentation is on the title that the chair said, Multilateral Initiatives, Regional Connectivity and Security, a comparative study of BRI and the AIIB in South Asia. In this presentation, I asked two questions which are related. One is, do governance norms and institutional mechanisms determine the legitimacy of multilateral initiatives and multilateral development finance institutions? Second question is, can transparent and collective governance of multilateral initiatives like BRI or AIB can overcome security dilemma? I asked this question in response, with a puzzle that I found, which is that while both initiatives, the BRI and AIB, were proposed and are dominated by China, while the BRI is funded by multiple sources, including Chinese state banks, multilateral corporations, the AIB has a different institutional arrangement in which all the members contribute towards a common fund, with China being the largest fund contributor. Both initiatives are intended to finance a huge infrastructure deficit in Asia, but the scope of BRI is obviously is quite larger. And so the question is why India, being a geopolitical and security competitor, to say, uh, participated in AIIB while it has opposed BRI. This is a puzzle that I would try to answer in this presentation, and I propose that by taking clues from realist theories and especially the ideas of Robert Jervis and others, that the transparent governance mechanisms, rules and norms can make in security or geopolitical intentions of a state, let's say China, clear and hence distinguishable for India. Hence the problem of security dilemma will not or does not arise when the project or initiative has a transparent and inclusive governance mechanism. And I would propose that it is since AIIB has an inclusive and transparent governance mechanism from the project conception to the final stage, that is why India could uh, trust China, or India could distinguish China's into geopolitical intentions behind it, while it is not the case with BRI. So the open, inclusive, and transparent governance mechanisms, norms, and rules help multilateral institutions to decouple, so to say, them from immediate geopolitical interest and intentions of the states that dominate them. So, although it is difficult in practice to achieve a complete uh, decoupling of geopolitical intentions of powerful states, but the open and transparent governance systems can help achieve a wider legitimacy and acceptance of the institutions. Like we have many examples. The post Second World War institutions, namely the IMF, World Bank, Asian Development Bank, etc., have achieved legitimacy due to their transparent governance systems. Although in practice there have been lots of issues of how the geopolitical and security interests of the major powers like US have been attached to this, but by and large the questions also is about whether the governance rules and system works well or not. So the and second, which is this question also becomes important because connectivity projects or development and infrastructure projects effect changes in the existing geopolitical dynamics, and that is why these projects is to even if these projects, even if they are purely economic and infrastructural projects, they stoke security fears among states, for which and I mean China's involvement in South Asia through BRI is a classic case where you have it might be that even the projects under the two initiatives AIB and BRI might be similar because basically they are infrastructure and other projects, but they evoke different kind of response. So these fears are these fears are caused by uh, the project because they affect change in the underlying relations of power that exist in South Asia. The security fear is created by perception and intention of a state that are not clear and distinguishable, to uh, use the phrase by realist theorist Robert Jervis. And that is why the transparent and inclusive norms mechanisms help make the intentions of a state distinguishable. And so the BRI, now let me talk about why BRI and AIB evoke different kind of responses with reference to the whether with reference to their governance structures. So BRI and AIB of course differ in their governance system, norms and mechanisms. The BRI projects are bilateral, wherein the projects are conceived, granted and funded and monitored by individual funding agencies and developers in China. In this process, the decision to make investment and loan depend on interest and needs of recipient countries and of course China. So geopolitical and economic factors that determine the investment and loan decisions uh, of course, are suitable to China, and that is why you have a problem that countries like India who have security or geopolitical competition with China, they do not trust the intentions behind BRI projects. But on the also the establishment of AIB and Belt and Road Initiative caught India off guard, for it has lacked a hard vision for integration of South Asia as part of its grand strategy until recent times, because India has always looked at South Asia region as its own backyard, and it has, because of due to its own economic, geographical, and security dominance. So the initiative to establish SHARC as a multilateral regional institution were taken up by smaller countries like Nepal, Bangladesh, and India gradually taken lead to further regional cooperation. But that too basically was security. Many people, many scholars have argued that India's approach to South Asia uh, region or in integration is through security prism. So uh, that is because the India-Pakistan dynamics, India's self-assessment of being a major power in the region have hindered the process of integration. The recent China's incursions into South Asia through bilateral and multilateral initiatives like BRI and AIB have put India in a difficult position. For on the one hand, the imperatives of regional connectivity and infrastructure development make it necessary for outside support in terms of investment by countries like China. On the other hand, it would alter the existing relations of power, which are perceived variously in India with an undertone of threat of sense of insecurity. The rise of China has provided options for smaller countries for economic cooperation in developing infrastructure, and as a result, China has become a major economic actor in South Asia. Thus, India has come to view region with a different vantage point very recently, when it is out of when China has poured a huge amount of money in the region for different purposes. But the acceptance of China as an economic actor has not led India to shed the security dilemma attached to the economic initiatives led by China in the region. Therefore, the AIB seems to have emerged as a node of cooperation at a time when the balancing cooperation and security has become difficult for India. It is at this juncture that element of intent and reduction of security dilemma comes into play to explain, and that also explain the India's support or participation in AIB projects. So one explanation that emerges out for to explain the India's participation in AIB in confirmation with existing rules of engagement, which are followed in different forms by other institutions, makes it seem more of a socializing process for China into existing international system than a revisionist attempt, because the AIB has its own governance system, rules, and it is also inclusive from the beginning. So the discussions to establish AIIB started as an inclusive project wherein China included all the countries um, to establish rules and governance structures, etc. But unlike BRI, which it did not, it was BRI was not an inclusive project, because it was conceived and it has evolved largely through the lens of what China seems to, and it is bilateral, not a multilateral initiative to say. Um, so the choice to join the bank by India is based on subjective perceptions and geopolitical considerations within the larger changes taking place in the region and the consequent security challenges posed by the rise of China to India. The establishment of bank by China can be explained by many factors. One of the most convincing argument can in this respect seems to be the case of China providing an inclusive but alternative institutional avenues for states around the world, thereby eroding the US influence. But India does not have problem as long as, since it also needs finance and funding for development in infrastructure project, but as long as it does not pose security threat to India. And that is the puzzle that both projects are dominated, initiated by China, but India joins one and does not join second. Secondly, the multilateral and inclusive nature of its structure. or BRI, AIIB is necessary for the very legitimacy and acceptance of the bank. This is important for a China-led bank is more likely to be dominated by Chinese interest, which is more tempting for China to do so. But reason why China has attempted to give equal power to others is to make its intent clear in geopolitical and geostrategic apprehensions, as understood by countries in different regions. Secondly, to improve its legitimacy, it has it has to bring more countries in its purview. That is why it needs to be inclusive, transparent, so that countries understand its countries can decouple or understand the differences between China's geopolitical interest and its infrastructure or developmental pushes. So projects under BRI are granted through an emerging regime of rules and norms that are collective, multilateral, and transparent. On the other hand, BRI is a China-led and dominated initiative in which the projects are granted based on Chinese commercial, economic, or geopolitical interest with no uniform and established rules, norms, and institutional mechanism. So the difference in norms, rule-based governance mechanisms explain the differential response of states like India to the Chinese-led initiatives like AIIB and BRI, because rule-based governance mechanisms allow states to make intentions distinguishable, thereby overcoming the security dilemma. That is what the conclusion. I would say in one line that it is the decision of India to join AIB is due to its rule-based governance system. If because in the AIB projects, India can make distinction between China geopolitical intentions and uh, uh, economic or commercial interest. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Devendra. It was a very nice presentation about the multilateral initiatives in South Asia. And of course, you bring an economic perspective of on for these initiatives. And I think it's very important. Both initiatives are very important for South Asian countries. It's a way for them to use and to get access to financial resources. But of course, these economic initiatives have their geopolitical consequences, and we emphasize very well in India's position towards them. Thank you very much. We have a question for everybody on chat. In every country, there is one section supporting Belt and Road Initiative, while some groups opposing to it. There are some reports of China imposing country into the debt trap. Anyone can comment. I will give you first the word to Devendra. If you want to say something about this question.
No, I mean, with reference to what I talked about, I would say that BRI projects have evoked both. It's more even those countries who have participated in BRI projects, except say let's say Pakistan or Pakistan. All countries in South Asia have been cautious in a sense. While to while the AIIB projects have not evoked any opposite response, so to say, because there one thing one there is difference between the two initiatives. One is the amount of investment and the extent to which infrastructure projects are undertaken are differ, but still the response is differential. That's what I would say.
Thank you very much for your insight, Devendra. Jumel, if you want to add something at this question.
Sorry, what is the question?
From chat, in every country there is one section supporting Belt and Road Initiative, while some groups opposing to it. There are some reports of China imposing country into the debt trap.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what is your point of view?
I guess I would dwell on reconciling the BRI's debt trap. Okay, as being questioned. So in terms of the practice of diplomacy from afar, talking about the Quad, just like what I mentioned earlier, okay, this debt trap is of course an underlying questions since 2012, I guess, or since 2013, and it has met not only once, twice, or thrice of um, allegations whether China is doing this to at least put pressure on these countries, which in the long run cannot pay the debt or the liability or financial liability. But I also see this as, of course, there are actors which are pro and there are actors which are not. But it can be separatedly in terms of the politics and economics. People are trying to politicize this, but of course, economically, some states are benefiting benefiting from. But of course, there will always be a consequence. The failure of these nations to come up with the only challenge is this, okay? Because debt trap is always there, whether China is actually pushing for BRI or not. The challenge is the failure of some nations to come up with a joint statement pointing to an inherent struggle, struggle to reconcile their competing views on how um, best to counter the BRI. Because if there is no alternative, of course, there would be no alignment of approach opposing this stauncher or the BRI. Uh, like for example, the pro U.S. foreign policy policy stances of Japan and Australia. Of course, after all, it is very much within these states as well as China's interest to remain cordial with one another amid global economic uncertainties and the questions of debt trap. So nations have espoused grand plans to improve their economies, and they really have to add the regional cloud, whether China is quite ambitious in terms of its BRI and the challenge of debt trap, wherein um, each state could actually push for its own agenda and interest. So China has every reason to be mindful of efforts to contain other regions or states rising, but the Quad is specifically, of course, being designed with this in mind. So China didn't officially respond directly to Quad, no, but we likely keep a close on the development as the unfolding demands possibly um, years to come. So we need to at least be careful on the debt trap, but of course we do not have to push away absolutely with China because other states are also depending on them. So while there is a need to institutionalize everything, it has to work toward a roadmap with actionable items, and it has to be tangible in terms of its results, stepping up coordinations with other initiatives, not only in trade, investment, diplomacy, politics, but of course in security like counterterrorism and other interests between China, US, and other states in the periphery. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jumel. It was very interesting. And also another participant, Nomita, would like to share her point of view. Please, Nomita.
Yes. Yes. So regarding the question of some groups in a country opposing BRI, I feel any developmental work, even if in a country, any development work, like for example, a factory is going to get established in a particular region, there are a group of people, or there is a group of organization that is opposing to that like developmental work, right? Likewise, in the case of BRI also, I feel the developmental work, they're establishing industries, they are building roads and railways. It is very obvious and very natural that some groups are going to oppose those developmental work. So over here, what the BRI, what the China and the host country needs to take in care over here is about the sustainable development. Whatever development they are doing in the region should be sustainable. This will keep the host country also happy and China also happy, and in the long run it will be good for the environment and the world, right? The second point what I would like to say is if the developmental work is going on in a host country, the labor force, may it be the blue collar or white collar, the project should wholly be controlled in control, or the workers involved in the work should be of the particular country, of the host country. This will keep the locals also satisfied. In any project, like if they are building roadways, they should obviously involve local people as workers as well as higher management in the work, so that they feel included, not like China is coming and working in our land and not including us. I think this is the main reason that causes conflict between the project which is being developed and the local inhabitants or local people. So that would be my answer: sustainable development and including local people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nomita. We are moving to the last speaker today, Madhura Chanda from Jadavapur University, India, with a presentation, The Border Road Initiative Towards a Thucydides Trap Between China and the US. Welcome, Madhura.
Thank you so much. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, we hear you. Thank you.
So I'd like to say that it's a great honor for me presenting the paper in front of you, respected chair, and the other panelists who are much, much more dignified and senior to me. So I'm really honored, and I hope I can maintain the semblance with my paper, which is titled Border Road Initiative Towards a Thucydides Trap Between China and the United States of America. So I'll be just sharing my screen. Yeah, so I hope you can see the screen, everyone. Okay.
Yes, we see.
Sorry?
Yes, we see your screen.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so before going further, I would like to make a very brief introduction of the two most important terms in my paper, that is Border Road Initiative and the Thucydides Trap. Now, the Border Road Initiative, as it's previously known as the One Belt, One Road. So it is a colossal infrastructure project that joins Asia with Europe and Africa for the overland economic Silk Road, and connects the Oceania and Indian Ocean towards the Mediterranean Sea and the African coast with its maritime Silk Road. And also it has a component of the Polar Silk Road that goes towards the Arctic Ocean and accounts for 1/3 of the world GDP. And now Thucydides trap, it is a term which is coined by Graham Allison to predict the stress on international relations as a rising power yields enough might to dismantle the established power. So now it is called Thucydides trap because it has been named after the great historian Thucydides, who had identified the reason behind the Great Peloponnesian War as the tension which started emerging between the rising Athens and the which threatened the status quo of the already established Sparta. So that was the introduction of the two important terms. Now, this is just a map that shows that how the MSR and the New Silk Road connects. I think the previous panelists have already established the routes quite well. Now, my mandate. So in my paper, I want to establish two arguments. That is how BRI is triggering a Thucydides trap between USA and China, and if there is any way to avoid that trap. Now, to give a structure to my discussion so that we both do not lose our way. So firstly, I would very quickly point certain concerns and risks emanating from BRI, then the United States responses towards these risks, and any possible mechanisms or potential adjustment that can save the world and the two major powers from the trap. Okay, now there are various risk factors involved, but due to the paucity of time, I have just come up with 3 concerns, which I hope will establish my point. So the first concern for United States of America is the geopolitical one. Now, the border road initiative's main purpose is to break, I can say that it is to break the bottleneck of Asian connectivity. So in the BRI, the People's Republic of China aims to build 50 special economic zones. So in order to secure itself unfettered energy supplies. So now it is very much imperative that in order to secure those lines, it will build a massive naval buildup. So which ultimately will once again raise hostility in the South China Sea. That is once again will trigger United States of America. Second, we have that is to increase China's commercial, economic, and military preponderance. So now BRI is not just a tangible infrastructural network of composed of roadways, railways, pipelines, SSAs, or ports, but it is also aimed at increasing the reach of China's economic and military presence and commercial preponderance, so which directly threatens the US positioning in Asia, in Eurasia, in Africa, and Europe that the previous hegemon in the unipolar world had built over so long. The third is to thwart the efforts of Quad, which is composed again of Australia, India, Japan, and United States of America, which I think Mr. Jumel has quite elaborately established the point. So I'm not speaking on it once again. Now coming to the second concern is the economic one. So now the BRI is it's a really crafty step that China has taken. That is, BRI has been projected or advertised as a initiative for mutual development. So they have allotted a budget of approximately US dollar of 1 trillion. And now it is China has not built the point over BRI as to increase its prowess or to dismantle United States of America, but they have projected it as a mutual development, both for China and for the partnered countries. So that makes BRI a very, very lucrative country, and which can lead to United States of America lose its niche of influence in those member countries. The second one is shows that it is an independent analysis by World Bank. That is, if implemented successfully, BRI has the potential to increase global trade from 1.7 to 6.2%, and increasing the real global income by 0.7 to 2.9%, which is once again a huge aspect of BRI, and that directly threatens United States of America, which stands at a trade deficit of more than 1 million as of the statistics of June 2020. And the third one is debt trap, which I think many people right now said. So for me, I think it is a concern of United States of America for the partner countries, because as the project is quite costly, so and also it is one of the most less defined but the most talked about initiatives, so that gives scope to corruption, ambiguity, and that again leads to the countries falling prey to debt. And also Malaysia is quite afraid of the BRI as being the new colonization, because or the neo-colonization, because if the countries do not are not able to pay the debt, then it means that there will be direct Chinese presence in their internal territory. And the third is the technological concern. Over here, I would say that China is doing its best to come at a better positioning vis-a-vis USA. So it is trying to overcome the middle income trap, which is a shift from low wage productivity to high valued manufacturing. And along with Made in China 2025, China is actually underscoring its Chinese dream of becoming the leader or establish the technological supremacy in the world. And also it is trying to move towards automation and it wills to undergo the fourth industrial revolution, that is by connecting cloud computing with the global supply chain. So China is actually doing much, and China with Huawei has also brought the 5G chip. So it is actually going much ahead, and USA is kind of threatened because an established technology means a more established military, a more established economy, and which will threaten the status quo that the hegemon has enjoyed till date. So the US responses. Now, I think that United States has played some cards. So for geopolitical concerns, the first thing that United States of America has done, or it can do much better, that is to increase the or strengthen the relationship of United States and Afghanistan, because Afghanistan is like the epicenter of Central Asia and one of the largest countries to have the reserve of rare earth material. So if United States of America can have a sort of control over Afghanistan, it will mean indirectly control over those natural resources, and that will lead to the reduction of dependency of other countries on China for those resources. And also it will also mean checking the unfettered supply of energy and oil, I mean gas and oil, from the Afghanistan or the Central Asia that China aspired. Next is to tap Asia's economic development political significance. So I would say that United States of America is trying its best to make its positioning much better in ASEAN, and it has also given a nudge to India, so that before it was very cryptic in the form of change of nomenclature from Asia Pacific to Indo-Pacific, but now it has been quite an open move. That is, United States of America wants India to play a bigger role because it has the capacity, it has the territorial capacity, population capacity to be a potential counterbalance against China. The second one is for economic and technological cards. I would say that United States of America has used an amalgamation of blockades, of tariffs on imports, on restrictions on investments. So there are quite a few things that they have done. Apart from that, there is this Builds Act, which is once again a retaliation, I can say a retaliatory move towards the robust networking that China has willed to build. So Build Act basically it gives United States of America a leverage over business providing grants and being business partnerships and capacity building with other countries. And also it is for technological aspects. United States of America is using a mixture of retrospective actions like lobbying against the Huawei 5G kit with its allies, and also promoting or upholding the Department of Justice to kind of hold China accountable for like the sanctions violations and intellectual theft, property theft. So now if I kind of balance between what Chinese has in its store and what USA is kind of responding, I would say that none of them are like in a cloud nine sort of a situation. Both of them has their own sorts of shortcomings. Like China is suffering its own share of scrutiny as date of origin of coronavirus, and also as there is a question in the chat that the debt traps. Obviously, people are terming BRI as the predatory lending or neo-colonization. So there are setbacks for China as well, and also for United States of America, like repeated moves like withdrawal from TPP, then so withdrawal from who. So these are certain things that gives us this idea that both of them are quite obviously they are in a game of brinkmanship, and both of them are quite exhausting. They are significant weapons of diplomacy and foreign policy adjustments, and now as each of them kind of exhausts their weapons, it exposes their vulnerability, and once they are vulnerable, they might risk a war. So that's why it's a very important thing that Thucydides trap is really looming. And as Graham Allison has studied that in the past 16 cases, out of 16 cases, 12 cases have resulted in war. So I think that we have to give some care and pay some heed towards the Thucydides trap. But now I am a big believer of cooperation and happy ending. So I'll just go for what I have thought that can build an international cooperation. That is in the 2018 symposium, Mr. Jinping has said that he will make a shift from BRI 1.0 to BRI 2.0. And he has also used an analogy. So with the Chinese painting, which is like Zhai and Gongbai, please excuse my pronunciation, I might be wrong. Now, Zhai is freehand, broad stroked paintings, and whereas Gongbai is a very detail oriented picture. So what he states is that BRI 1.0 is that broad, that raw thing, which is less defined, which is ambiguous, whereas Gongbai, which will be BRI 2.0, will be built on three principles, that is built on prioritization, built on clarification, and built on pilot projects. That is, BRI will use pilot projects to scale the risk and success of the initiative before investing capital in diplomacy. Next is there is a study by the War College's Strategic Studies Institute, which kind of moves from the hawkish nature of United States of America to a dovish nature towards China, because they have very nicely identified that China will never ever accept being contained. So it is wise that they do not try to contain in a very defensive form or try to appease, but to accommodate China very strategically, and to escape the Thucydides trap or a Churchill trap by creating a co-ruling mode, where a niche of influence where both can work with each other for a better world. And last but not the least is, which is once again a point by Graham Allison, that is learning from the lessons of Cold War. Because as Pablo Neruda has once written in one of the poem, I forgot the name of the poem, that is victory without survivors. So if a nuclear world or the nuclear powers risk war, then definitely maybe someone will be victorious, but there will be no survivor. So it makes no sense. And finally, I would say that from the lessons, it can be also paid heed to the precarious rules of status quo, which is termed by John F. Kennedy once, that is maintaining and creating the balance of power, a robust balance of power, so that the stability can be maintained in the world. So with that, I rest my argument. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madhura. It was very interesting and smart presentation. So I think you have a very promising future. So right now I will invite all the speakers to add some details or to tell us the conclusions for today for Belt and Road Initiative. And I will start with, you will have 3 minutes each of you. And I will start with Rahul. Are you there?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
A conclusion from your part regarding Belt and Road Initiative in general and your paper specifically.
So what I think of Belt and Road Initiative is, I take it as an ordering balancing that is taken by the China, because the US, after the unipolar world, US has the advantage of guiding the world system towards what it feels like. So like the BRI project, I think it's like an institutional order balancing, where the China is coming up with institutions like AIIB to basically fund most of the projects. So that is my first point. And my second point is that there is also a strategic balancing that is going on from the Chinese side, because if you like the Madhura that she pointed out about Thucydides trap, yes, that is a situation because we are seeing a power transition happening, where there is a declining power, like I also mentioned in my presentation. Like there is a declining power, that is USA, and USA, it's a saturated economy, and its prospect for growth is not so much high in the future. So because of that, it wants its interest to prevail. It wants its interest to be in the world, and it wants to gain as much as possible from the world. But on the other side, there is a rising power, China. And now China, being a rising power, it wants more from the international system. So its interests are basically irreconcilable with the US. So now what happens if China wants its interest to be to be turned into objectives, and then it wants to realize its dream, then it's obviously its interest will be clashing with the US. So if its interests are clashing, then there is a possibility of war, and that's what I basically see in my presentation, where I basically spoke about why China is so much investing in the Pakistan, Myanmar, or the other countries which are related to BRI. So it basically wants to have a balance of order, okay, rather than we say balance of order, so that it could basically tackle the US unipolarity and so that US unipolarity, yeah, that's my point. And regarding the debt trap somebody has mentioned, yeah, that's a big problem, because Pakistan too is facing that particular problem, where most of its initiatives are being funded by itself, but it got costly credits from the. We have seen what happened in Sri Lanka and what has happened in Myanmar also. Like most of the projects then are leased to the Chinese. So most of the countries doesn't want to lose their sovereignty in that particular sense, because they feel like if they lose their sovereignty, then they are compromising on their interest. And China China is in these countries, in my opinion, is for the strategic interest. What is strategic interest? It is not there for the development of the people or for the development of other countries, because it's an international system where there is no enforcer, where there is no global enforcer. So I feel like China wants to get as much as out of this political international system that is an anarchic system. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Rahul. And I will move on to Jumel. Your
Okay.
final remarks.
Can you hear me, Dr. Pap, and the rest? Okay. So with my presentation, by the way, let me highlight once again the so-called Quad 1.0 to Quad 2.0 being said to be the toolkit to handle China, and it needs sitting across the table and thrash out things. It is now widely accepted that an alliance is not actually feasible. It would be more prudent to get into a need-based partnership with focused objectives to battle the Chinese genie, so to speak. And alliances can be thought of later. It's actually time for free nations to act, said to be by free nations taking into considerations of any decisions, whether sliding into China's Tinsia or bring the Quad 2.0. Okay, and of course, another point that I want to highlight is that it is of course reasonable reasonable to expect reinvigorations of the Quad, despite its overhauling, given the current security landscape. Whether this would sustain in the long run, given its tenuous history, as anybody's guess. I guess the second or the third point that I want to raise is that this vision faces two challenges. This BRI, one is conceptual, and the other is regional. While China strongly protests that BRI is entirely a geo-economic concept, many countries see in the initiative a China's geopolitical plan to create dependencies among participating countries, and over time shape a new China-led global order to replace this West-led order. So this concern has actually led countries whose participation is quite crucial to realize global connectivity, such as, for example, what I mentioned earlier, the India, some Southeast Asian countries, and EU members opposing this initiative. They need to assure that China, despite its emphasis on the partnerships and win-win for mutual benefit, it has to seek to replace US hegemony with hegemonic intentions to its own, if they can. Now, this can be best achieved through projecting whether the BRI is or not as a China-centric and China-led proposal, but as a truly international enterprise founded in consultation, transparency, and of course, upholding of norms of visibility and accountability in all transactions, and independent redressal of any dispute resolutions like what is happening right now with the Philippines and China and the rest of the ASEAN member states in the South China Sea dispute mechanisms based on standard international norms. The fourth would be the regional concerns has to relate with the security scenario, not only with the ASEAN and the Asia Pacific, but of course in the Middle East. So long as the region remains deeply divided with nations perceiving existential threats from their neighbors, there can be no possibility of it contributing usefully to the initiative. So given the central importance of regional stability and the absence of an effective peace process, it is urgent that the countries most affected by this turmoil and uncertainty, whether structural or postmodern, such as India, Japan, and US, shall enjoin or must join hands to shape a peace initiative to encourage engagement between estranged neighbors like China and US, like with they're having trade dynamics, and of course the issue of 5G and of course Five Eyes. We have to promote region-wide peace and stability. Only then will the Middle East become of course, Middle East, Asia Pacific would be a valid partner in the BRI, and only then will the BRI vision provide peace, growth, and prosperity that, of course, other regions like Eurasia and Indian Oceans are desperately need. And I want to highlight that China will also be under pressure. China is, of course, under pressure that they want to write off or extending lending to some of the BRI countries as locally currency devaluation poses threats to solvency and debt servicing activities, like what questioned earlier. This is a particular concern for African and Latin American countries, by the way, which they are exposed to cratering commodity prices and will see rapid deteriorations in the current and fiscal account balances this 2020 up to the next year. So other Asian countries, for example, like Pakistan, Indonesia, will similarly see their currencies weaken in sustained investor flight to safe havens. Last but not the least, there are 3 points to contemplate why it is not just about the US and China in the Asia Pacific. First, the emerging regional order is not a zero-sum game, and the decline of US influence will not necessarily cement or guarantee the rise of China. Washington and Beijing are pushing two different concepts of order. The Washington consensus or the US consensus is based on the security guarantees, market-friendly economic policies, and liberal values, whereas China or Beijing consensus is focused on economic development and human connectivity. So I guess we have to be mindful of the international order in the future, wherein countries may deal or not with one another, or whether on a bilateral or multilateral basis, or in terms of the institutions and initiatives that they have signed up to, that may actually impact in the long run, extending to which the international order will be chaotic or compact in the future, whether BRI or Quad are present. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jumel. Next will be Nomita. Dear Nomita.
Yes, Dr. Irina. First, I would like to speak about Russia-China partnership in BRI. No doubt on every front, Russia and China have come closer. What I feel the major reason for China getting closer to Russia is because closer and cooperative towards Russia is China feels that its position in the world is not as stable as before. Maybe because of the conflict with USA or BRI projects getting opposed in several countries. I feel things between both China and Russia have become more pragmatic and realist, which means neither side expect unconditional support from either of the country in each and every issue that they are facing, right? The second point which I would like to present is like the idea of de-dollarization. I feel both the countries, Russia and China, there has been effort to limit reliance on the USA dollar, and this process is known as de-dollarization. It is known and well-established fact that the US dollar holds a powerful place in the global financial system as the world's reserve currency, and de-dollarization has become a priority for both China and Russia to protect their bottom line and push back against American dominance. I feel BRI is a threat to hegemonic power of USA. talking about BRI in a broader sense, I would like to emphasize that there should be sustainable development in the partner countries. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nomita. Devendra, are you there for final remarks? Oh.
He's not there. He is not.
Okay, I will move finally again to Madhura.
Yeah. So I would just like to emphasize what I have said over there, that obviously there will be risks in the international order and in the post-COVID world order with so much of changes going on. But what we have to delve on is to find a way out, to cooperate with each other, because as I said before as well, that going into risking a war into a nuclear world does not make any sense. So if one wants to maintain its status quo or maintain its position or uplift itself in the international world order, it has to survive first and foremost. So that can only be done when there is a sort of balance of power which can be maintained. So I would reiterate on that point over and over again, because as I said, I'm a huge believer of cooperation. So I would like to end it in a good note, positive note. And another thing I would say that for BRI as a potential creator of debt trap. So basically, they have also kind of acknowledged that it happened because there was scopes of ambiguity and there were scopes of lack of transparency, because BRI is kind of advertised from in a approach of top-down approach and from a campaigning sort of a way. So that's why what they had followed is creating a vision, then mass mobilizing across that vision, around that vision, and then finally calibrate and recalibrate. So which gave room for corruption, for lack of knowledge about what BRI is, and finally falling into the debt trap. And so I would say that it's better that if the BRI 2.0, what it has come up with the vision of building more transparency, more accountability, if BRI can be proposed and it progresses on that way, so I think it will be a really great infrastructural development for Asia in particular and the world in general. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madhura. What can I say? We had a very interesting session today, and I'm glad that we had time to bring extra information for our public. And about the Belt and Road initiatives is a very provocative subject with very many aspects to discuss, from actors involved to security, economic, infrastructure, and so on. We talk about national implication, regional implication, global implications. So I hope that this debate today was very useful for everybody here. Personally, I learned a lot from you, and it was very useful to see so many different insights from so many countries. As always, Nepal Institute for International Cooperation and Engagement is a very smart one with its events. I hope that I will see you again in other contexts, and we keep in touch.
Thank you, everybody. Distinguished chair, speakers, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of the 11th session. It is my honor to propose the vote of thanks on behalf of NICE to all those who have graced us with their presence and contributed their parts to make this event a resounding success. First of all, I would like to express our profuse gratitude and sincere thanks to Dr. Irina Ionela for agreeing to chair and moderate today's session. Our sincere thanks also goes out to all the speakers for being a part of the event and delivering such convincing and comprehensive presentations. We are really honored to have had all the speakers with us here today. We would also like to acknowledge our gratitude to our friends from the diplomatic community, experts, academia, media, and different organizations. Finally, I must mention our deep sense of appreciation for the audience who participated in the webinar and those who are watching us live on our YouTube channel. Thank you for your valuable time and attention and for making the session productive with your questions. We are truly honored to have had you with us this morning, and we hope to stay connected in the future as well. It's been a pleasure. Do join us for the next session. Thank you.